Hello, everyone. Welcome to the LARP Tales Podcast, the award-winning LARP podcast where we tell our stories through live-action role-play. My name is Oliver. I am joined today by my co-host Robin, and also joining us today is our guest Kat. Kat is a crew member for Profound Decisions, which is the company that runs Empire LRP here in the UK. Kat came on to talk about plot writing and, well, plot in Empire LRP. What is plot, who writes plot, and how plot is used and disseminated through the Fest LARP that is Empire. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, click subscribe if you're new to the To Have and To Roll universe so you know when new content is posted. If you're listening on an audio platform, please leave starred reviews. That helps people find us. Go check out ways to support us down in the description and the show notes of the episode. With all that out of the way, let's get into our chat with Kat. Hey, Kat.
Hiya.
Thanks for coming on. So, Kat, you're part of PD Crew. Why don't you give people like your position and what you do in PD? Because I know you want to talk about plot and even the name plot writer as well.
Yeah. So I'm one of PD's current heads of, and we've just changed our name actually. We're heads of plot writers rather than heads of plot, and that's quite telling.
Okay.
A head of plot in most systems would probably be in charge of like all the story in the world and helping other writers work out how their story fits in. And at Empire, that's the game team's role. So the permanent employees, and what the heads of plot do is look after the plot writers and help them make sure that they can do all the different things that you have to do to get your plot out into the field at Empire, which is possibly slightly more complicated than you might expect.
Yeah. So how long have you been in this position of PD? Because I know you've been at Empire for a long time. Have you ever been, actually have you ever been a player at Empire?
Have I ever played? No, it's the one thing I haven't done. I started out as the egregore in Dawn, back when there were only 40 people there and half of them were traders.
I cannot picture that. 40 people in Dawn.
Nearly the smallest nation at the very beginning. I think partly because of the high costume for some of the aspects.
Yeah.
Partly it just didn't capture people to begin with. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what year would that have been? Like 2011 or something, is it? Or a bit later?
Yeah,
13. Yeah. I mean, I guess at that time, yeah, I mean, I guess at that time, was that before Game of Thrones or was that during Game of Thrones?
oh my goodness, I don't know.
Yeah, like when the show came out.
Maybe before the TV, but after the books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, who would have been the more popular one? Like Wintermark, I imagine were always quite popular.
Wintermark started out our largest by far, and have only recently got so that they're not the largest anymore.
Yeah. So I'm assuming if you were wrangled into egregoring back then, I'm assuming you were already in with like running PD's games.
Yeah. I'd been NPCing Maelstrom, but my LARPing starts right back in the middle of the 90s. And I have played very little in the entire time I've been LARPing. I crew way more than I play, including the first event I ever went to. I went intending to play and ended up crewing instead.
Yeah.
So
what is it about like crewing that kind of calls you more than playing? Because we've been playing for we've only been LARPing like 3 full years, and people are constantly like, you should come crew this, you can crew. We've never actually jumped the fence yet. What is it about crewing that kind of drags you away from playing?
There's sort of two ways to answer that. So a couple of things. I like feeling needed. I think most of the people on crew would say that. But also, back in the mists of time, I wanted to do theatre. I wanted to direct theatre. And I never trained for that, have never done that. There is something about generating backstage story that is the same thing about moment creation and giving people experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that side of things. It's also specifically for me more that I don't actually enjoy playing.
Okay.
If I talk about needing an alibi when you're LARPing, like needing an excuse and a reason to be allowed to roleplay, to feel like you can get going, does that resonate at all?
Kind of a bit like a prompt.
Yeah.
You know, because
Okay, yeah.
I know that a lot of players like they love those kind of prompted like curses, you know, in Empire. Like they love that whole like you act like this, you know.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I can NPC and not play is that I get particularly hung up about what I'm doing and how it will be perceived. So I have, if I'm playing, I have a really bad, strong need for those alibis. I'd far rather play in a game where somebody else has written my character, not me, because then I can't.
Oh,
no,
I see what you mean.
no,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
I'm connected
yeah.
with that now. Yeah.
And so because essentially therefore the experience of playing is quite full of anxiety, and the experience of crewing has stress, but not that same kind of anxiety.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear you say that, because there is a lot of, and sometimes because we've been talking about the anxiety of especially Empire recently, and some people have kind of come back at us and been like, oh yeah, well, you know, you should try something different, you know, you shouldn't be stressed, it's just a game. It's just like, no, it's kind of part of it. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like you want the anxiety, but that's a good way of framing it, because I have thought about that, though I haven't crewed, but I obviously know whatever monster played some of the monsters and things like that. And if you're going to be someone who does, especially like a maybe like an immoral act or something like that, if you're doing it as your character that you play 4 times a year, and everyone associates you with that character, it's a totally different thing to you just playing a one-off monster that comes and tries to kind of shank you or steal something from you. You know?
Yeah, although to be fair, in the Empire world, those are not things we ask our monsters to do very often. But other games, yeah, your mileage varies for sure. For me, yeah, there's a whole family thing going on backstage in a sense as well. You get very close to people because you go through what appears to be and feels like at the time really critical situations. Of course, all you're actually doing is making a game happen, so they're not that critical, but you get all the bonding and adrenaline that comes out of, oh my goodness, we haven't quite got things ready for this skirmish at 5:20. What are we doing for the next 15 minutes to make it happen?
This is it's very much like backstage at theatre and production, isn't it? Because I mean, it's almost identical, apart from the fact you don't really have well, I mean, I guess the players are your audience, I guess, you know.
No, the players are both the audience and the cast.
The cast, yeah.
A lot of the time, I mean, so very little that we do is heavily staged in the sense of we have no idea where it's going to.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of the elements that go into it, that's where it's like theatre. So, have you been in encounter tents?
Yes.
Robin has. I've yet to manage to get into one. So.
Obviously, there's a whole set design thing going on there, and props and lights, and sometimes they have sound effects in them as well.
Yeah.
Skirmishes, you've got the whole getting the crew ready, so costuming, but you've also got, sometimes there's smoke, sometimes there's smoke bombs, occasionally there's lights, but yeah, so all those elements of theatre productions. We've got, I think it's about 16 rails of costume in the monster tent backstage.
Nice.
An entire like makeup desk. What else is there? Oh, a huge container that is racked out. There's over 40 different boxes of props in there. Yeah,
that just sounds like so much fun to be able to go in and like, do you ever end up, so I know that obviously a lot of things are planned and are worked out and things. Do you ever at these sort of big Empire events have situations arise where you do have to, quite close to time, go in there and be like, right, we need a Grendel, we need one now, and we need them for this sort of encounter that's happening, or we need to come up with something for this? Do you ever have that sort of, thing happen?
I'm laughing because, to answer you honestly, I have to sell the game team under the bus, but I don't think they'll mind me doing it.
I think we fine do it.
I feel like we know enough of you now. It's fine.
So in theory, no, that shouldn't happen. Everything goes into a database. We plan the encounters into the database. We tend not to. So some events, you'll have plots that will move through like several moments in an event. So something will happen on Friday, then on Saturday, and then on Sunday for the same plot. Because Empire is designed to be so responsive, that's relatively rare for us. We are more likely to put one thing in, find out what happens, and then come back with the response to what happened at the next event. So
Yeah.
we like to have everything documented in this database. But the game team are writing so many things that they have a tendency to put their own stuff in. And that means they will come out of their little cabin where they do all their work all event long and go, and they'll usually say Beth, because Beth's the person in charge of all the NPCs. Beth, in 2 hours' time, I need, and I've forgotten to put them on the system. Can you help? And yeah, so it does happen, but it's not quite how we intend to work.
Yeah. So how does the tree of plot, like I'm trying to wrap my head around how like the tree of plot kind of like disseminates down. So like I'm assuming there's obviously a just a broader campaign game with the mechanics, and then they go, right, the story comes off of that. So like what you see on the wins, but then you must have, obviously you've got people writing smaller plot points
Yeah.
or the weekend as well. Do you have like several different teams, or is it like one kind of plot at the top and then you all just kind of splits off?
Very much not that.
Okay.
Very much the other way around. So yes, exactly. You've got the campaign, which is almost essentially this board game that runs over downtime, and that board game generates the stories. Then you've got all the elections in the field that generates that energy, and the declarations, the Senate motions, and the synod judgments. Some of those essentially generate what we call mandatory plot, meaning we've promised the players that if X happens, we'll go and write something about it.
Right. Okay.
So there's the first layer of the campaign stories coming out of the wars, but then there's that second layer of different things that we've got to go. And there's maybe about 10 of us at the moment, and everybody is looking through them and going, oh, I fancy that one.
Right. I see.
I've got an idea
Right.
how to respond to that one, and then pitching that in, and Andy on the game team oversees all those choices and makes sure they fit within the worldview and like the consistency of the campaign.
Yeah. What about more kind of, sorry, what about
Yeah.
more like random, not random, but more the things that aren't maybe tied to like a synod judgment or something like that? Something is, someone has done or emailed in and said, oh, I'm looking for this. How much freedom do you get with things like that? If you like see an email and go, oh, actually, I fancy a bit of, I'll write a bit of that.
We technically don't respond to player email. Essentially, player wants something to happen. That's not a route to getting plot.
Mhm.
We do is, as writers, we suggest, oh, I'm interested in doing something with this. And we might ask the egregores that are of the nation near to it, do you think this would interest any of your players?
Okay.
Right. Okay.
They
Yeah.
won't tell us which ones,
Mhm.
but they'll say yes or no, we think that thematically people might engage with that. So we'll start running that kind of thing. We also, it varies, there aren't so many of us that do it at the moment. Writers come and go over time, but we will look through player backgrounds.
Okay.
And we will occasionally decide to pick a thing out of backgrounds, and we'll pitch running something that resonates with that. The risk for that as players is that we might go somewhere totally with your background that you didn't plan when you wrote it.
Yeah.
Go off in a very different direction. So yeah, very, very, very little. Basically, as a player at Empire, it has happened in the past, but in theory, you can't ask for plot and have it. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I kind of flags for me with, because I know I've got some friends that have read some really amazing like plot, and that that they have seen this plot through, and it seems like it's their plot. But the thing that is tricky in my mind for that is that if you go, okay, oh, here's the plot, specific player, and then that player is like, oh, I'm not coming to this event, and then you've had someone write this plot, and they're like, oh, actually, I'm having a year off Empire, and you've had someone like literally write a plot that now goes nowhere because one or two people aren't showing up.
So it's very rare for a plot to be somebody's plot in that sense. Somebody might have started interacting with it really early on, and therefore it feels like theirs because they've been pursuing it, and it continues to invite them places. And then if they disappear, the writer will just have to decide what to do. We can look up whether characters are booked. So we do tend to know when that's going to happen. There's a particular thing where that did used to happen. It used to be a problem. So the old way of Challenge the Iron Duke, the summer ritual, actually did generate plot for individuals. And some of the ones, particularly when I was running that in about sort of 2018 to 2021, some of those were very long and ongoing and got very convoluted. That's a big reason why Challenge the Iron Duke has changed and is now a challenge that happens and you can respond to, because it gets frustrating when plots fall through the holes, and it can happen either way. It can happen because some players have stopped coming, or it can happen because a writer stopped writing, and the rest of us haven't quite noticed a small bit that we describe it as plot that fell down the back of the sofa.
Yeah.
We've got a lot better of it. There's a lot less of it now than there used to be in the early days, but it is a thing that can happen for sure.
Do you find it challenging then? There's obviously there's thousands of players there, and when it comes to plot and figuring out who's going to react with what sort of plot and everything, do you find it quite challenging trying to keep everybody essentially happy and excited, or is it just a case of the plot is there and people who want to interact with it are all welcome to, but that is one part of a large game with a lot of things people can get involved with?
I like your second description better. I think it fits Empire better.
Okay.
It's quite an unusual choice for a fest game in the UK. I don't know much about how Menhir's Fate are doing things, but the way Curious Pastimes and Lorien Trust have tended to work is the game is driven by plots. That's what you. I mean, people go to get the game to hang out with their friends, but the world moves through plots, and Empire doesn't behave in that same way. I would say there's masses and masses of game out there, and then the bit that's plot rather than campaign is just extra small things that you can get involved with, and one of those might suddenly grow and take on something that occupies you for 3 or 4 events, and you might even in those 3 or 4 events you might find you've been to 3 encounter tents, but then for another 4 years you don't go back in again.
Yeah, I mean, like the encounter tent I got to be part of, it was, I would say accidental, but not quite. It was basically someone in our house had this encounter and basically kind of grabbed me and went, I need a bodyguard for this. So you're coming. I went, okay. No idea what I was like, what was going to come up against. And it was incredible. It was like, honestly, it's so strange that a little scout tent sitting there in the middle of a festival with thousands of people, and it felt like you stepped into a different world. Like, I forgot that there was thousands of people around. It was real. It was happening right there and then. There was this sort of like waterfall effect. There was sounds. They managed to make it smell differently. It was absolutely incredible. And one of the most terrifying things that I have done, because I ended up in single combat with a Siaka Herald in a tent. It was so scary that when I actually rolled out the tent, I forgot that it was like out of character outside the tent, and I'm still like screaming and reacting. The poor person's like, "This is out of character. You're fine. You're okay." And I was like, "Wait, what?" But then that little bit there then generated more plot after that, because then the story got around Dawn that a group had just been involved with this Siaka Herald. And then more people came up, and then more people got little tidbits. And some people went, I'm going to investigate what you just did. So they got involved with it. And it was really nice to see that little plot that involved 3 players within one weekend spread through an entire nation, and even further to other nations coming in, being like, hey, we heard that you're the ones that got involved with this. Because then we saw little other parts of plot that were connecting in a sense, and we were like, oh wait, so this has been an ongoing thing with this group over in Urizen, and now it's connected us. And it is incredible when that kind of thing happens. Do the writers of different plots, do you guys work together on different parts? Do they ever sort of have totally different plots running and then bring them together and connect them in any way? Is that something that happens?
So there's a load of different angles on that. The first one is the thing you were saying about happens to a small number of people but engages the whole field afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
That's our entire goal with working with those encounter tent spaces, because we can never make it fair to get enough people through them. That's just not a thing that you can do in a festival field. And it can be quite hard to think about, has what I've done in here created something that will ripple outwards or not? So that's a thing we're always thinking about and trying to do. In terms of the connections, things happen in a number of ways. Sometimes, like the campaign team will say, we'd like a number of plots relating to this because this is happening, and different writers will write different things, and therefore they will connect because it's been asked for. Sometimes a couple of writers will go, I'm doing this, you're doing that. Do you think we could make them merge? And sometimes players will decide something's connected that isn't. The other possibility that
I feel like that probably happens more often.
it's definitely, but you can, particularly in terms of finding things in past life visions.
We've heard some of those go wild.
You can end up with wild speculation, and we can end up hearing things that'll come back. We'll get a query comes through God or refs about something, and it'll take us forever to unpick which plot it's actually referring to, because essentially the Chinese of whispers of it has morphed it so far from where it started. But yeah, definitely that thing that you're describing of spreading out over the field and finding pockets of connections is a goal. For some of the stuff we do, I think one of the advantages of Empire is it's such a big audience and such a big amount of play styles that as writers we do try and write lots of very different types of plot.
Yeah.
And so there's like the core principle of profound decisions, that everything should be driving people to be making choices. So we might do things that will only send a couple of NPCs in, but it might pull a group of mine owners together to make a choice by voting on something that isn't one of their standard votes, but is a specialized one. And so that's kind of playing into the core way the game works. But then we'll do things like, we know that when people are out at battle, we want to give the people who are not at battle lots of interesting things to do. So we might do, you might have heard about like mass curses or mass ghost plots. We'll bring in where a lot of people get affected by the same thing. And that is, they're not necessarily stories that are going to go anywhere beyond that 2 or 3 hours for which they happen. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. And so we do plots that it's about experience, and like I said right at the beginning, about alibi, giving people excuses to roleplay differently, roleplay more, roleplay with people they haven't met before. And that can come in all sorts of different ways.
Do you think that method is maybe why some people on the Empire field don't feel like they're getting plot, because the plot is disseminated amongst 1,000 people? So say if NPC talks to someone talks to Lord Damon goes talks to someone else and tells them about this thing, they don't feel like they've interacted with plot. They won't just go, oh, plot time. They go, oh, Damon, I think he was talking crap, like what's that all about? They don't feel like, because if you talk to an NPC, you're like, oh, and it's an NPC, you're like, oh, it's NPC time, do you think it just gets, it can get just lost? Because I know I have, like, we have two good friends on NPC side and plot side that have said this to me before, especially if I complain about plot, going, oh, there's no plot. It's just like, well, there is plot. Do you think that's maybe the case?
So I think it's two things. Yes, 100%, that is part of what happens. But also, Empire is not a plot first game. Like if people are LARPers that want to LARP for plot that the organizers give to you, I wouldn't be saying Empire is your best of the festivals to choose. Empire is the best of the festivals to choose maybe if you like politics. It's the best of the festivals to choose if you want the sheer scale of it. But we are not generating as much of that NPCs will come and visit you and talk to you plot as some of the other festivals do, because it's not what we aim to run. And also just our scale is massive, and we haven't scaled the size of the plot team since year one. Basically, we're different people, but we're not much bigger than we were back then. So yes, sometimes it's volume, but also it's approach. It's because it's not the core of the game. It's not necessarily what you're going to find. And both Claire and Matt, the game team director, would say that it isn't the most interesting thing about the game. The most interesting thing about the game is the interactions you have with the other characters.
Yeah.
And the plot is just to give you something else to talk about.
Yeah, it's actually like like just going off and trying in the past, like, few years, we've tried a few different LARPs, different types of LARPs, different types of games. Um, and now, like, we hadn't done like a parlor LARP like before, but when we kind of started doing them, it was like, oh, actually, Empire is like a large parlor LARP. Like that's the thing with Empire. I think when you can literally just get a load of Empire players, chuck them in a room, and they'll just start playing Empire. I mean,
That's,
there doesn't need to be.
yes,
There's literally people. There's loads of these social uh,
yes.
player events. There's no plot at all. You just go, here's a room, and people just start playing Empire.
Yeah, there's no organizer-driven plot into that event space. Of course, you're still playing probably with whatever's going on in the campaign because that's affecting your characters. So you're discussing it. That's what gives you the meat. I think the Empire world, if it didn't have things happening in it, would be hard to hold a player event around. But yeah, it's a deliberate choice. Honestly, I'm not sure it's my favorite choice as who I am as a LARPer,
Mhm.
and who I am as a plot writer also. I'm very, very into creating experiences.
Yeah,
And so the kind of plot I write at Empire is the plot that's really self-indulgent for the writer. It's using the encounter tents. I do things where I've put people in blacked out encounter tents before and made them listen to music in the dark and decide what emotions it was causing. My goal for people coming out of encounter tents is how many of them are crying when they come out. But
That's
that's
great.
it is, absolutely. But if I was trying to do that in 100-person game, I could give a fair experience to those 100 people and they'd all get some of it. Whereas at
Yeah.
Empire is literally a lottery
yeah,
as to whether you happen to get into any there. The one thing that makes you maybe more likely is getting an archmage position, but pretty much anything else is totally a lottery as to whether you get any of that experiential kind of plot.
Yeah.
Um, so
No,
yeah,
I do like I said, I love the counter tent that we did. It was amazing. But yeah, like I can get why that's the part you really like as well, because there's just so many things you can do with that. And I've seen it in other LARPs since then as well. We did a smaller LARP, and the LARP that we did, basically the organizers, their goal was that every single person would have an encounter tent experience that weekend. They almost got everyone. I think there was 100 players. I think they got like 80 something of them through a personalized encounter. And some of the things they did, and as the weekend went on, the encounters got darker and scarier. And it was like they were just like, let's really push these people and see. And it was like a horror sort of scary game as well. So they could really do it. Like I got buried alive, literally buried alive in an encounter tent, which was terrifying. But some of the things that I've heard people tell me about the ones in Empire, the range is so wide. Like the ones that they do for the kids,
oh
they
yes,
sound amazing.
yeah. Yeah, Saturday mornings, different writers at different times, but I think it's a good few years now. It's every Saturday morning for the very little kids. They're usually puppets of some sort, though not always. Yeah, lots of fun those.
yeah.
But yeah, it kind of brings me around to that. I said right at the beginning, the phrase plot writer is a bit of a unusual title because it isn't like writing a tabletop narrative. It isn't like writing, it's not even like writing for Lorry Interest or Curious Pastimes, where you might try and write a year-long arc
Right.
of what might happen for a nation. You put branches in that, depending on the choices they take, but they're usually writing year-long arcs. We do very few of those. We don't do plots that arc like that very often. And we don't do plot nation by nation either, which I guess to players of Empire will seem totally normal, but having come through the Lorry Interest and the Curious Pastimes model, and I think Menhirs Fate are using
The
a
art.
very,
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
the writers belong, the writers take on a nation and maybe a guild. So the very first plot I wrote was for the Encanters Guild in the Lorien Trust, which had a setup very similar to Menhirs Fate, although I I get sad when you describe the beautiful teepees, because we didn't have beautiful teepees. We had one large plastic marquee, and we used to go and buy green and white striped gazebos from Asda that we sort of took walls off the marquee and went backwards in these plastic gazebos. But it was a similar setup, guilds for different things. We'd give out the spell cards and run some quests.
Yeah.
And yeah, so all the other games, the teams function with the nations and with the guilds. And also the teams tend to be refs and writers. Like you tend to do both in those old systems.
Okay.
In Empire, the refs and the writers are completely different groups of people.
Yeah, what you're describing is exactly, I think, what they're doing with Menhirs. Yeah, because our Menhirs group, we've got one of the nation supports for our nation, which is like a dual role of like egregore and, like you say, plot for the nation and being a ref as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the standard model for British Fest. Empire and well, all PD games actually, they've never done it in their games, are weird and unusual, and it has its advantages, but it also has disadvantages, because of course that's now a whole other set of people you have to communicate things to. So the refs need to understand what we're doing and certain parts of what we're doing, so when it comes near them they can interact with it. This is why this database becomes so crucial.
Yeah. So is there any, like, what does your weekend look like? Do you, obviously you're writing in between games, but then obviously are you then jumping in NPCing, or are you completely just kind of behind the scenes set dressing and things like that, or just observing?
Different writers do completely different things. And yes, where do I start?
depending on what event it is, it sounds like.
From 2015 to about 2019, I looked after costume. Now I can't sew. I just happened to live near and have free time. A workshop that at that time in Coventry, that at that time started with Storm Katie. You'll have probably heard about the year where everything bleeds pieces, got rained on, and it's when we stopped doing bank holiday weekends.
Yeah.
So the kit was in massive piles over this Mandala Studios workshop, and I went and was part of the team that sorted it out. And so for 3 or 4 years, I was looking after costume between events. So my event starts on getting there Wednesday night, getting up Thursday morning, and helping the head of costume hang everything onto rails. Basically, that's how I start. Nothing to do with the plot writing side of things at all. Plot writing things, we do a thing called getting the packs ready. So if you imagine we've written our encounters, we've put them onto the database, maybe they need some resources, maybe they need a ribbon or two. And on Friday morning, a bunch of us will get together and we'll go and check in with God and go, right, when's the window? You're getting ready to serve all the players there. When's the window where we can come and get our stuff and grab it out of the way? And that's like our big first moment on site. But we will also, a bunch of us, still be sitting in little cabins finishing bits of writing. Yeah. So there's things that have to be done in advance. Like, let's see, your skirmish has to be sorted in advance because the skirmish teams are going to brief that. But some of your NPC roles, you might be adding things to their briefs, or you might be writing a reward scroll that's got to go out partway through the weekend. Sometimes I find myself at 6 o'clock in the morning, somebody's decided they need to hand a short story over that explains something. So I'll write a short story at 6 o'clock in the morning and pass that over. But yeah, so we live in this monster town. We're on radio constantly, although these days it's a lot less answering questions. Mostly the refs and God can read things on the system and they can answer the first level of queries.
Right.
So something has to have gone a bit wrong for us to need to get a query. Or we do accessibility queries as well. So there's all our encounters, if they're not in Anvil, we fill in a bunch of boxes about access needs. And sometimes they'll be really standard, like, yes, there's definitely wheelchair access here. But for example, if it's going to be something happening partway into the woods, my accessibility note will say, depends on the weather and your wheelchair, radio me and I'll come and talk to you and we'll figure out how far you can get and where we put the encounter. Yeah. So picking up the responses to those kind of things. What else do? a lot of the plot writers also NPC things, not necessarily their own plot, but sometimes other writers' plot.
Yeah.
And a couple of the plot writers also ref. So in between encounters, they will put their yellow and blacks on and go out on the field and process rituals, especially like around 2 o'clock on a Sunday when we are not running that much plot and desperate for refs.
Yeah. Are you at the stage currently where you kind of need more kind of writers, or?
So it's never need, actually, because of what we were talking about earlier with the way the game works. But we are at a moment where we think we've probably got capacity to support 1 or 2 more if people are interested. And so that's kind of partly why I want to be really honest about how difficult the process is. Like, it takes a lot of time between events, and some of that time is being amazingly creative and thinking about interesting things. But a lot of it is putting very detailed stuff into databases so other people can help you make the plot happen. And it's an experience like nothing else. I've written a little bit for the Lorien Trust a lifetime ago, and then I've written a couple of games where I've been involved in the kind of games. I think you've played a couple of games now where you get longish pre-written characters.
Yeah.
So I've written a couple of games like that.
I know that's a lot of work from just speaking to those game runners. It took us forever.
Yes, but and that can take a lot of time, but it's often what a writer likes to do because it's creative writing.
Yeah, it was totally self-inflicted. They were like, oh yeah, we started out. I think for that Game of Thrones one, they were like, oh yeah, we started out. The first one was like half a page. And by the time we got to character like 17, it was like 3 pages long. Their backstory.
Yeah, they all admitted to it being self-inflicted in the end, didn't they? They were just like, yeah, we didn't need to put that much in it.
So the challenge with writing for Empire is that you have to do quite a lot of writing admin that is not self-inflicted. It's done because other people need it. So you need to do the egregore as a 2-line brief because you can't expect them to be able to read through all the plots and work out which ones they should care about and have something to say about.
It's interesting, actually.
The short version of what, like, very often we'll say, why not point new players at this and give them 2 lines on it. What else do we have to do? We have to write the signs of importance. Are you familiar with the ritual? It's a night ritual that...
No, not at all.
Signs of importance is, I'm going to say this wrong because my rules awareness is rubbish. I'm always looking for that. It's a relatively low level night ritual that is casting covens, and it has the same results as a drug called Goose Whisper, which is used mostly by Calavasi mystics, but can be used in other places. And you do them and you get given a vision of a certain length. Now, those visions only exist because we write them, and they are written in connection with the plots of a given event, so they have to be written afresh for each event. There's a bunch of small, always interesting, but we've only got 6 weeks, or 7 weeks between most events, but E2 to E3 is 6 weeks. So
How many of those do you have to end up doing then the night rituals? Like, how is that every event? Do you end up doing a lot of those? Do you know about them before the event, or is it kind of just sprung upon you?
We know we know you have to write them. The refs will need a deck of some, and some writers love writing them, so they'll write loads. And some of us are like, I've got 1 or 2 plots that really need it, so I'll get it. And sometimes you'll just go, I haven't quite got around to that. Refs, have you got enough in the box? Oh, my plot's not in there. It doesn't matter. So works out different ways. Oh, I just thought about something I wanted to talk about. Robin, on your last video, you were talking about puzzles and codes.
Yeah.
And all that kind of thing. I realised I haven't mentioned, but sometimes the encounter tents are escape rooms.
Oh, please. I love escape rooms. I spent months on a leaderboard at our local escape room. Like, he doesn't like them. He's never done them. He doesn't like them. But
I mean, I'd probably do an Empire theme one. But I mean, if it's like an office that I've got to get out of.
No. You said you don't like escape rooms, so no.
They're not quite the same. They don't tend to have you can't get out. They tend to have a bunch of things you need to do before the end of the conjunction time. But so the reason they popped into my head is when you're doing one of those, then you tend to have codes and things like that to write as well. But yeah, they're one of the many things that you can end up having to write between events.
Yeah.
I
I
love
like
that.
those, like with the portents thing, because I think there's a couple, like I guess it happens with Whispers Through the Black Gate as well. That those usually kind of feel quite magical in game, like I'm not intended, but like when you literally ask the game something and you get an instant response that feels like it's fresh, and feels like it's like, oh yeah, they like, I've got this specially made for me. But I think people like that type of thing, because I'm just like, sometimes people go, oh, I did this Whispers to this ghost, and I was like, how? And I'm like thinking, how did PD know that you were going to do the the Whispers? Like what?
I can't remember what the process is, but it's on the Whispers page. There is a process when so you can do Whispers to one of two things. You can do it to somebody you know's
Mm,
dead character, and then you just get your old group.
yeah,
And a lot of people love those because you get someone to say goodbye to someone from your old group.
yeah,
Uh, but you can also pick up something from plot documents somewhere and decide to Whispers someone. And so long as you've got an item that is connected enough to them,
yeah,
we will try and work out who we think you mean and put someone in front of you. And these days, we usually get the right ghost you were actually looking for.
yeah,
There was a time when we didn't.
yeah,
Or people would pick things and want to Whispers things, and we wouldn't have put an item on the field to connect because essentially what that was our way of saying, no, there's nothing to look at here.
Yeah.
But it wasn't stated back at that time that you needed an item. So yeah, it used to be complicated. But there was a period when we had to put those together on site at the event. I think we get a bit of advance notice now, and somebody starts putting it together about a week before, but I'm not sure.
because
I
that's the
love
cool
that, like
thing.
like whispering and being like seeing the wrong ghost come there. I think that just sounds hilarious. A little bit awkward at the time, but that does sound really funny because again, even I guess if the wrong ghost appears and everyone's like, oh my, that was the wrong ghost, but the actual players themselves are still having an interaction with the ghost, and they might be like, oh, well, what does this mean? This is not the ghost we were intending to, so this must lead to something else.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where you can get confusion and people looking for plots in places that there wasn't one. But yeah,
Still fun.
yeah. So
I
yeah,
didn't go on.
no.
Yeah, I didn't realize the egregores got like I guess they must do like get a little kind of brief. But what I mean, I've got friends who've been egregores before and that. What is the currently? Did you have to write any kind of like, I know you've already said actually that you didn't write any plot for Dawn, but has the egregore game changed since you did it like at the start of the game?
So egregoring in the early days, I mean, egregoring I think is still an incredibly difficult role now.
Hmm.
Uh, but in the early days, we were costume police. We were um, potentially plot delivery mechanism. We were gate openings. Um, I don't know. I genuinely don't know how much it has changed, to be honest. And it depended on what nation you were in. I had so few players, I didn't have to do a lot of pastoral support when I was an egregore. And I think that is definitely supposed to be one of its many functions. But now that we've got the participant welfare team,
Yeah.
the egregore is just a first point of call, and they can move people to more specialized support. So that's nice.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Um,
I've never actually had, but I've had like role play moments with our girls over the past couple of years. But it wasn't until like recently where I was having to do like admin for having a hat and things like that. And then every time I went to a Port Egret, I realized how many people are constantly at the Egret being like, this is something's wrong with the senators, something's wrong with the generals. Like, what do I do? There was a time I was just like, I'm confused, Egregore. What do I do?
Yeah, I mean they are your go-to point of information, and yeah, we try and particularly provide them with little bits of things for new players, particularly to get involved in plots. So I think it's amazing that we do audio versions of the Winds of Fortune now, and I think it's great that there are bullet pointed bits on the Winds of Fortune, so you can skim them if you want to. But I still think that for some people, even though there are bullet points, because they're such long pages, they don't look like it's something you want to look at because you don't necessarily realize that it would be okay to just look at the bullet points.
I definitely identify with that because
Yeah.
I get what I get. I'm glad they're there, but sometimes I will read the bullet points and I'm like, "Ah, I'm just gonna go read the whole thing because I need the fluff kind of context of what just happened. I'll go down and be like, oh, this army's destroyed. Wait, what? Hang on, no. Go back and we'll read the whole thing. I don't know why I scrolled down in the first place.
Whereas I love bullet points. I do not get through half of it. I have to put all the wins into an e-reader every time, and I have to like prioritize which ones I really need to know. But I end up doing this genius thing where I met a new player who really loved the wiki and just loved reading it and loved documenting. And that new player now gives me notes each event, so I know what's happening.
That's brilliant. That's great. But essentially, for me, it's important that we don't expect new players to necessarily have absorbed them. And so one of the things I try to get egregores to do, and not all writers will do this, but I will ask egregores to, if they're talking to new players, mention a couple of different bits of wins and plot related bits to that.
I guess it's just knowing faces, isn't it? Like if you say, oh yeah, someone's interested, to go on a skirmish, they can go. There's the go speak to the.
And I have this tendency
Egregores.
to what are called box in the Hall of World plots, which are essentially the request plots, essentially where you can put your name in and say, yes, I'm interested in this. And you always use the egregores to promote awareness that exists, because it's usually only a small paragraph somewhere in the Wind of Fortune. It's very easy for that to get buried and missed.
Yeah.
So when it comes to people that may be interested in plot, I mean, it sounds very much like something you need to be the other side of the fence first anyway, right? Because I imagine you're not good. You want to have someone, and most you aren't like just full-time writing plot as it sounds anyway. So it sounds like if you're interested in plot writing, it sounds like you need to go crew side first and find a spot in there. Would that be accurate?
It's not 100% you have to. You definitely can't stay playing while you're doing it, but you could. Most common route is to join the NPC team. But you could come and join the plot writers, knowing you were just going to start writing one plot, but you'd also learn to ref. It just so happens that for the ref schedules, it's better that you don't join the ref team, because then you might have to drop out to do your plots. They're going to be much happier with someone who can drop in to bolster their team up. So that would be another way to do it. But yeah, you could also just come and be a plot writer, write a couple of plots, and then have what we call R&R characters, a rest and relaxation character, for a couple of events. But we probably expect you to then start writing more and more plot, if that makes sense, rather than that R&R character having too much of a life and a space in the game.
Do you ever manage to play your R&R character?
No, so I tend to play occasional characters that have got a bit of an R&R value to them. So for how many years? About 8 or 9 years, I was sort of a professional storyteller. I say sort of because I was mostly doing corporate storytelling rather than performance, but I trained as a storyteller. And so occasionally I will go and deliver a story for a bit of plot, and then whatever character I'm doing that as will sit around for a bit.
Around, have a drink.
As much, yes, that's about as much R&R as I get. But it's one reason I stopped egregoring. I'm really bad at social role play. I'm really bad at social anything. I need to be doing something. And so because the egregores, in order to connect, I mean, sometimes they're too busy now, but they do genuine social role play with the groups as part of what they're doing. They're just engaging. And I find that quite difficult. So yeah, R&R, I don't mind that I'm not doing it, to be honest.
Yeah.
My friends are crew side anyway.
Yeah.
And in all sorts of places. I was talking about doing Encounters Guild plot in the Lorry Interest in the 90s. Well, the person who was writing most of that plot that I was working with is one of the participant welfare team.
Okay.
They just LARPs that kind of small world where people are everywhere. So yeah,
you get to know
yeah, it does. It sounds like you guys have got this really nice little, like you described already as being like a family. Do you find, is it mainly all the same people every single event? Do you get many people sort of in and out, or is that main group of people?
Oh, so plot writers particularly, not a huge amount of, well, it's not a huge amount of continuity. That's not true. I've just been so I've been plot writing since 2015, and I'm definitely the longest of the plot writers.
Right.
Renna's been around maybe nearly as long. quite a number of the other current plot writers, like 3 or 4 of them, have been NPCing a good number of years, like maybe 2015, 2017, 2018, I don't know, but only been plot writing for 2 or 3. So, but then we've also got 2 plot writers who've come in very new in the last couple of years. We've got a plot writer who came through from Skirmish Crew. Yeah, so it, and also because we all work individually rather than writing as a team, I don't think that the plot writers themselves would feel cliquey to approach, because actually we don't, the family isn't us as plot writers. The family is like a huge wider team of PD people panicking and making things happen. So yeah, I think it's a relatively easy team to join from that perspective. The challenges are there is 4 nominal heads of plot writers for only about 12 plot writers, and that's because of the complexity of the process. Essentially, we need to support people in a lot of different ways, and we're trying to figure out how best to do that. This is the first year there were 4 of us. Poor John was just one on his own trying to do it the year before.
Yeah. So that's all just like cross-referencing, making sure everything makes sense, that type of thing.
So we kind of divide it up. Katie, who's one of us, actually teaches game design in her real life. So she's taken on writer support for new writers coming in, kind of talking them through the way Matt and Raf's game design principles work.
Yeah.
I can get into that. I do wrangling Matt and Raf and the game team and making sure their stuff's together. Mike does deadlines because he doesn't mind telling people what to do. And then Dale, who's a lot of his time is actually invested in another system. He's one of the main writers for Gritlands. So
yeah.
he's our reactive support. So at an event, he only runs a small amount of his own stuff, and he is basically there for any writer that can't be there or is having a meltdown because something's going wrong. It's like he's the fixer. So yeah, we divide ourselves up and support in different ways.
It does sound amazing. Like if so if somebody is watching or listening now and they're like, do you know, I really do want to get into this, you know, what would you said about joining an NPC crew? Like what would be their first sort of step now if they are literally like, I want to show interest, I want to get into this? What do they do?
2 things. So read, email crew@Profound Decisions and say that you're interested in plot writing, and also, if you can, give like a backup thing that you like, if you'd be happy to NPC while you were figuring out plot writing, or if you'd rather ref, then mention those kind of things as well. And then there's a wall of Matt text that lives on the crew wiki, and whilst it is a wall of text and an awful lot to read, it is really interesting on like how game design works specifically for Empire. And there's me Googling because I haven't got the link ready, but I think I might have to send it you afterwards.
That's all right. Yeah,
we'll put everything down as well. Yeah.
But that is a thing to read and get a feel for some of the things that are different to writing in a lot of places. I'm working on a version of it that will be shorter to read with Matt's wall of texts in like little expanders underneath, so you can get it from the horse's mouth if you want to, but you can have a bullet point summary if you want the short version. But we're not quite there with that yet.
Probably a good thing for players to read as well, you know, get a sense of how the sausage is made and what you can expect from plot, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that players can't read. It's not behind a wall. It's just on the crew wiki rather than the main wiki at the moment. It doesn't any longer have a picture of Death Knight and say we don't do Death Knights, but that was how it started out a very long time ago.
Right, before we wind up, what's your favorite bit of plot that you've written that you can talk about?
Oh, favorite bit of plot. Oh yes, I think I can talk about this. So accessible skirmishes are quite common now. We've got better at doing them, but when we hadn't done many, I took an idea that I got from street gaming down in Cardiff, where actually the first year they did a game called Everwake. The first year they ran it, they had like the bad guys that were chasing us through the street game, and they were dangerous because they would do things like jumping out near crossroads, and they would cause people to run, and it was just very unsafe. The next year they fixed that, and their bad guys would lose interest in you if you stood still. So if you were moving, you could be chased, but so long as you were still, their focus would go and they'd wander off. And so I took that monster, put it into a skirmish, gave them a curse on touch. So if they did touch you, you'd get a curse. And then had Kez, who is one of our NPCs, and he's an amazing musician. So we had flute music in the woods. These weird walking, they were a sovereign's people. I can't remember actually what we called them, but they belonged to a Varushkan sovereign. That if you moved too fast, you'd catch their attention and they'd start coming towards you. And if you caught their eye, they'd curse you. Yeah, people came out proper terrified.
That's really cool. That's very like Doctor Who-esque, the kind of.
Yeah. It is post Blink as well. It's not. It was very much inspired by the particular street game, but it doesn't predate Blink. So yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Did
Yeah.
any of the like players catch on that it was linked to how fast they were moving? Did any of them kind of like realize that and go, wait, everybody, we need to do this? Or
Yes, and actually, I think we probably gave them an out of character brief that was the case because we wanted it to be accessible and safe. So we had to make it clear that you weren't going to need to run. So yeah.
you know what it's like though, you get the brief and then go through. Something in that moment, there's something in that moment where you kind of, I've done it. I've been told, right, this is, what we do, to land shark, for example, this is how you want to work around a land shark, this is how you take them down. You get there and before I know it, I'm standing in front of its face with a sword being like, oh wait, no, I'm not supposed to be here. I was told this before, but this is real and this is happening right now and I need to do this and be heroic and forget everything I was just told.
Yeah. So I think that the first one that they had to stop from running was actually the egregore they've taken with them, but
That's even better.
if they're doing it on purpose, I'm not sure. But yeah, no, they're just it was one in a very long line of now there are loads of writers doing all sorts of different kind of accessible high threat encounters, but pulling that off early on was a good one.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Right. So is there anything else, Kat, that you want to go over, or now you got a platform, shout out to people before we wrap up?
No, just if this crazy world appeals to you, it is an experience like no other, but come into it with eyes open. It's quite a lot of annoying admin work as well as the fun stuff.
Some people love that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's kind of why I'm being so upfront about it, because if I can find people who do, then that's perfect.
Well, this is it. Yeah, I mean, this is the important thing. Like, even at the start there, you described that. Yeah, like playing wasn't for you. You'd prefer to be on that side, and I'm glad there are people that can run cool games. But people like me, you don't want to do that. Awesome, Kat. Thank you very much for coming on. Right, we'll say goodbye to the podcast, everyone. See you later. Thank you very much for stopping by. If you enjoyed the episode, let us know down in the comments. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, leave us the stars on audio platforms if you want to support us. Look down in the description or the show notes. We have a discount code for Empire LARP. Your first ticket, you'll get £15 off, and it'll also help us out as well. Until the next time, though, we love you very much and stay safe.